We are ready for our next talk, and I'd like to bring on Mike back on stage and give us an overview and some of his thoughts on the interconnected Web3 economy. We've already kind of gotten some sneak peeks around what we think is that world and how we think it's going to evolve. So I'd like to ask him to turn on the video and say hi and kick us off with this talk. Welcome.
Hey, hi, Kartik again. So yeah, I'd like to talk about this idea of the interconnected Web3 economy. Let me just try to share my screen, and if anyone can let me know if you guys can see anything.
Everything is good.
I'm just trying to put it full screen. What do you see?
Yep. Brilliant.
So yeah, I'd like to talk about the idea of having an interconnected Web3 economy. It's not something that we hear every day in crypto, so it's a little bit tricky to try to explain it. So I'll try to explain it by telling how inefficient our current kind of financial system is. So I'm sure that everyone here relates to this idea or this feeling of having to queue at an ATM just to take some cash out to make a payment when you maybe are in a hurry or you want to grab something quick at the store. So this is one of the best ways to understand how inefficient our financial system is and was. Of course, you also had issues where maybe you were ordering a Deliveroo or some sort of food online and you got a kind of failed transaction. And sometimes it's because, of course, you didn't have enough funds on your card, but sometimes it's for other reasons. And so this is a very frustrating experience. Other times you are maybe someone who is like working in the Web3 economy and you are just like a freelancer or a contributor and you're just waiting to get paid maybe as a UX UI designer for some design you have done. And it's just a business that pays you late because, for example, there is an internal process which needs to happen for clearance or just even to understand your details or your bank account details to send the money to you. So there are a lot of inefficiencies in kind of the fiat in financial system that we can experience every day, even though we have been innovating so hard around money. So, for example, the world has changed a lot from sending checks over email to being able to put your credit card details into a website and have a subscription charged to your account every month or so. So even for like this world that we have innovated so far, so that is somewhat seamless and abstracted, even in that kind of SaaS subscription model, there are a lot of inefficiencies. Both for the consumer or the one who's actually paying, that has to, for example, input the data and then making sure the card is not expired, and if it's expired to renew it, but also for the merchant. So if you are like a SaaS company that has hundreds or thousands or even millions of users, even just a small percentage of these payments failing is a massive headache for you. So to put some numbers to this, let's just look at a report by Deloitte that was published in July 2019 called Economic Impact of Real-Time Payments. So all the businesses interviewed for this report, 31% of them say that their business would be willing to pay some type of fee to ensure they receive all payments immediately. So it's a massive interest from this kind of instant payment, let's say. But also, if we look a little bit deeper into the report, we see that this low speed of payments is somewhat holding up capital in the system. So there is a lot of inefficiency in having to deal with delays when it comes to payment processing. It's not only just on the operational side, but is also on kind of the social side. So real-time payments would make financial services more accessible and attractive to consumers. And also they could potentially help consumers budgeting, because the less delays, the less variability, the more certainty, and hence it's easier to plan around your personal finances. So all of these are real problems for both the consumers and the business world. But have we innovated around this? Have we tried to make payments instant from a fiat traditional financial system point of view? Yes, we did. And of course, in some countries, we have seen an uptake of instant payments, for example, in Korea and the United Kingdom, and in others a little bit less. So looking at this chart, you can see, for example, the uptake of instant payments. Let's just call them instant because real time doesn't really fit what these are. So here you can see how Korea, for example, have really started to use mobile wallets or even fast payments that are bank-to-bank transactions that are instant, so that your money gets to your wallet as it's sent. So there is no time delay between when someone presses send and when you receive it, or just a few seconds. So there is no days or hours of delay. So we have done something, but is not probably enough. And this is still very nascent. It's a new industry. The instant payment industry is like not been there for over like 20 or 30 years. So if we try to look at how much our society has evolved over the last, say, 10 years, and we look at how the payments have evolved, we see a little bit of a lag. Let me try to give you an example here. So imagine that you are in your 20s and you want to watch a movie on a Saturday night. How the old world worked is that you had to go to a shop and try to rent a DVD, for example, if you didn't have the movie at home. And everyone here that is 25 or 30 and above knows Blockbuster. And you really had to go to the shop, so you have to go get it. Then maybe you wanted to see, say, Matrix, and Matrix, maybe there were 5 copies available and they were all 5 out, and you have to change the movie. So you have to browse, the whole shop to find another movie to watch. They also have a limited catalog, so you can't see every movie you want. You kind of have to choose the ones that are there. And it's kind of high effort for both you and for the ones that have to, refill all the shelves and manage all this kind of physical goods movement around. Now, of course, you know that Netflix have been tackling this issue. And so they had this beautiful paper catalogs or web catalogs that you could choose a movie from and then order it, and then it would come to your home as a DVD. So this is a massive improvement because you have a massive catalog now. You can really choose every movie you want. Is lower effort because it comes to you, but there is still a downside, which is it's somewhat delayed. It doesn't come to you instantly. So we all know that Netflix have evolved into a kind of web online streaming platform. And so today what we can do is that, we can see the movie we want across all the catalog in the world instantly, here and now, as we want it from our couch. So it's a massive change in society in terms of service provision. It's a lot more comfortable. There is a lot less effort. And so we have been seeing this massive transition from something that was a very high effort and very limited and very expensive to something that is very easy to consume and where we want it, when we want it, and what we want as well. And this kind of where we want, what we want, when we want has been somewhat characterizing the latest generations that have grown up in this world, where we can just decide what movie to watch in a second and then have it delivered to us immediately. The same concept of, say, Amazon Prime, next day delivery, what you want, where you want, when you want. And the issue is that this new generation has to deal with a payment infrastructure that is nowhere near these expectations. So let's look at how, for example, a SaaS payment looks like. So we believe digital money is somewhat broken because we ported this outdated financial system to the digital internet native economy we're experiencing every day. So let's look at how kind of a software payment looks like normally in the SaaS economy. You normally start signing up for a business in one moment, let's say now, and let's assume this person stops using that service in a year's time. So there are 2 actions from the user here. They kind of sign up and kind of log out or sign off. So they don't want the payment anymore, right? So the system anymore. So it's 1 year and it's just 2 interactions, the start and the end. However, if you look at how our payments world work today, especially with online credit card subscriptions, this requires 12 interactions between some of the service provider systems and the kind of consumer systems in this case. And all these interactions take time, effort, cost, and can fail. So across all this period of 1 year where the user has been using the service, a lot of items can actually go wrong. So what happens here is that maybe one of these payments is failing. And normally what would happen is that someone will chase you up, maybe tell you to update the credit card details so that the one maybe was expired and you have just to put a new one in. And so there is a cycle that starts that, might just take some effort and cost from both sides, because on one side they have to chase you up, and on the other side you have to update the data. But normally is resolved, say. So, you pay just a little bit delayed, the system doesn't stop, the service is available to you, and everything is fine. With the issue that there was some cost in the process that was additional to what would have been needed if the system didn't break down and the payment didn't fail. However, in a big amount of these situations, over 10%, what happens is that the failure of the payment discourages the user to continue using the service. So this actually was a user that was willing to continue paying, and suddenly, is not a user anymore. And so, how big is this problem? Like in the SaaS industry alone? Well, it looks like 11% of failed payments turn into churn. This is according to a report by Forrester in November 2020. So is a big value. And if you consider scaling this across a large organization like Netflix, I can imagine that it generates quite a lot of cost. So, let's look a little bit deeper into what this kind of payment failure means for the user, for example. So, there is a decrease in customer satisfaction, clearly. There is an increase in cost of recovery because they have to recover the funds. Sometimes the user maybe didn't pay, but then never pays, and this generates some debt. So, failed payments can turn into bad debt that is really hard to collect, because it's really hard for a company to chase you for, $11.50 that you have to pay to them. But if you scale the amount of users that have to pay that amount and never do, it can create a bit of a revenue issue for the SaaS provider. So it is actually a big problem. So we believe that services should flow, as services flow in real time from provider to client, payments should work in the same way. So we don't have to have so many more interactions from both parties to make this agreement work. So we believe in a better way, and so we're trying to dissect how that could look like for especially this kind of SaaS industry. So let's think about the example I was doing before, where someone signs up today and then stops using the service after 1 year with this kind of 12 payments, one per month in between. So what would be the kind of ultimate solution to this problem? Well, ideally, the minimal effort solution would be that there are two interactions here, when I sign up and when I stop paying. And so it would be ideal to have this interaction when I start subscribing to a service. I basically start potentially paying. And then when I stop paying. This is the most ideal situation, because we are coupling the action of turning on and off the service provision with the payment. The issue is that if we do this with the traditional system, you would either have to pay everything up front, and that is unfair to the client most of the time, especially in a consumer market, or you have to pay everything at the end with a very high risk from the provider of the service. So this doesn't really work. And that's one of the reasons why we have subscriptions on a monthly basis, because they make it easier for both sides to at least manage their revenues and cash flow. But there is a better way. So imagine if we could start signing up for a service and start the payment at the same time, and then pay along the way, and then stop paying at the end. So imagine just the ability of sending a small fraction of a dollar or of a penny every second or in real time from one side to the other. As the service is provided to the client, the payment goes back to the supplier. So that is a very powerful idea. And it can really unlock a lot of value in our economy, because it removes all this friction with this 12 payments, or even more if you're signing up for, like, say, 10 years or 5 years, or if it's rent going to your landlord. So we call this payment streaming. Is this idea that you can send value over time in a frictionless fashion on chain between parties. And I just want to kind of try to expand more on what does it look like when multiple parties are trying to start this kind of payment among each other. So just for those that don't know the kind of value provision of streaming or what they bring to kind of in terms of features, let me just detail them for you in a second. So why streaming? Why would you want to send money over time, a fraction of a penny per second? Well, first of all, you have this kind of constant flow. So both parties know the payment is ongoing, and every second money is moving along the way. So it's fair for both because nobody has to pay up front or at the end, but you have an atomic swap between service provision and value payment. Also, you don't have to lock any capital, because your capital is only used and then moves across to the other side in real time. So either you have it or the other person has it, which means both sides can put that capital at work while it's not moving. And that transaction is really instant. So it's really powerful for capital efficiency. Also, these streams are interconnected. So if you pay someone in a stream, that other person can forward that onto whatever the person wants to. So they can direct, say, 20% of the stream to some savings account, pay the rent, pay some of their expenses, or bring it into DeFi. So you can create concatenated streams in an interconnected economy. Also, you can have open-ended streams that don't have an end date. So if you have an ongoing service, but you don't know when you're going to stop using it, you don't have to know in advance or set in advance an end date. So it can be an ongoing payment rather than a finite payment. And also, there is no gas fees on the chain for as long as the stream is running. So you do pay gas to open a stream, edit it, or close it, but you would never need to pay gas for the status quo or keeping the flow running. And this is a very powerful economic structure, so that you can actually move any amount of money between 2 points without paying any fees for the ongoing flow of money. And all of this comes with a simple token wrapping. So, to add all these features to any ERC20 token, all you have to do is just wrap it with a Superfluid wrapper. So that's why streaming is so powerful, because it has the ability of leveraging all these features together. So what would this look like, among multiple parties? So as you can see here, I just tried to map blocks as entities or consumers or businesses, and the green lines would look like streams, and that's kind of the value flowing between them. So imagine how efficient it would be if a business could receive all the revenues in a stream and have them, say, immediately available on a per second basis, and then use all of these revenues to then pay their suppliers and making sure that they can pay in real time. So this Fantomatic business could have all of the revenues in a stream, or a big chunk of them, and then all of their expenses. So imagine they're almost equal because they're growing aggressively, but without basically borrowing any capital. Then you could create a company or an organization which really works on a very thin buffer. They don't have to have a lot of capital in-house to absorb the shocks of normal traditional cash flows. Of course, they will need some buffer to potentially manage streams changes. If someone stops paying, then the stream will stop, and so they need to absorb that, and they can't just pay out directly, but is greatly reduced. And so it would be very efficient for an economy to run in this fashion. But it's not just about business-to-business trade or service provision. It can also be for something like investing in real time or exchanging. So let's add in here an exchange. Now you're sending a currency and you are receiving the other currency in real time. What this allows you to do as a business is, if you have revenues in, say, dollars or the dollar equivalent in crypto, that means that you can pay your suppliers in a different currency and get the real-time market exchange rate at all time. So you don't have to bet on it. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So now you can see how this can expand even further. So imagine a closed loop now where someone is an employee in a company and gets paid in a stream, goes out there in the world and pays a subscription to some service like Messari for informing himself about crypto. And then someone at Messari is an employee as well, or a contributor, and gets paid in a stream as well. So what you can do here is you can do some sort of closed loops where the money flows really across the different players and doesn't really sit anywhere, but it is really just efficiently flowing across the economy. So if you were to expand this even further, you would have effectively an interconnected Web3 economy, where value could flow frictionless with no delays across the different players, and have an allocation to something that is valuable or meaningful at any time, so that you can direct capital to what is meaningful for the economy or what is convenient for the economy. So is this kind of idea of having an interconnected network where financial players and economic players can interact one another without intermediaries really, and with instant or real-time payments, and the ability to have this flowing across them without any queues or delays that could create inefficiencies. So you might look at this picture and say, wow, this is very interesting, but it's utopic or is far in the future. And we didn't see this yet. So what I'd like to share with you now is a 3D visualization of just 300 wallets that are streaming stablecoins on Polygon. And they are doing so in real time over Superfluid protocol. So what you're seeing here in this visualization is Polygon network on a stable coin. And you can see how there are microeconomies like the one in the middle of the screen now, where there are different addresses in this case interacting with streams to one another to power a microeconomy. I tuned down the amount of addresses in this visualization to show you exactly how microeconomies are working. So this could be a super app, which is doing some interesting financial transaction or just distributing tokens. This one, it's more like a reward DAO or a reward stream where someone is rewarding a lot of contributors a small amount of stable coins over time. And then if we go here, we see like a circular economy where players are transacting to one another in what it could even be like an endless loop. So there is really a lot of opportunities that we could build with this kind of infrastructure. Now, let's expand to more than 1,000 wallets and look at what the Polygon network looks like on a stable coin as well. So this is over 1,000 wallets, and now you start seeing how it looks like a brain structure. There is a lot of interconnections among different players. And you can see rather sophisticated connections, like the one in the bottom center of the screen now, where we're going to zoom in a second, where they could really build this interconnected Web3 economy, and value could flow in real time across all these players with no friction. So if we were to do this with 100% efficiency, which is of course impossible to achieve, we would reach about infinite velocity of money streaming. So that there would be an infinite velocity of capital, which would be very, very effective in reducing friction and reducing queues in our economy. So I just wanted to kind of leave it there with this visualization of the Polygon network, because the possibilities are somewhat endless. And I believe this concept of a frictionless interconnected economy has all the potential to transform society fundamentally, because you can generate economic growth without having to inflate the pie, but just reducing inefficiency in the existing GDP that a country, for example, is generating. So thank you very much for your time today. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, or you can find me on Twitter at Michele D'Aliessi or on Discord at Superfluid.finance. And we would love to talk about what you can build with these tools, like what applications we can generate. And if anyone has any idea, we would love to hear from them.
Like, that was amazing. I think the question I and everybody has on the chat is, that is an incredible visualization. Who made this thing? What did you use? And how can we make it for other things?
Yeah, so the visualization is actually done by someone in the network of Francesco. So I think he would be better placed to answer that. And he has been hacking it away just for this presentation. So we could, yesterday night, he was just doing it so that we could have it for today. But it's just a start, we can do a lot more. And, we can color addresses based on what they do. So if they're a DAO, or if they are, an exchange, or an end-of-user wallet. So, we are just getting started.
That's amazing. And it's like overall, just I think a really good way to kind of think about structuring how we think payments would work. And you are kind of, I think this kind of came up in our panel earlier too, which is the second you kind of have anywhere from multi-chain world to multiple apps talking to each other and just overall composability, then most things turn into a routing problem. And that's where most of the efficiency comes in. And being able to say, hey, we can make this process or cut this step is an actual massive improvement. And you just kind of get that as a default here, which is great. My kind of only other question would be, actually, let's see. I feel like there's a comment coming from, oh, no, it's just Fran replying to who made that visualization on the chat. This is great. Well, I think the questions I want to ask will probably overlap with the next panel. So I'm just going to pause here and we'll just kind of go into the next one early because I was kind of curious about more real-time application examples, but that's exactly what the next panel is about. So I want to thank you for doing this chat and the presentation. And I'd love to kind of bring on the next set of panelists.
Thank you, Kartik. It was a pleasure.
Right.